Welcome to the Business Between Bells podcast, a space for those trying to build sustainable businesses between school drop-off and pick-up. This podcast is here to support you while juggling parenthood, business and school life. Now introducing your host, Katie Mains.
You are listening to episode 10 with Sarah Piper from Invisible Partners. I hope this finds you all well and you've had a great week. Now, something that's been on my mind of late is just how supportive the business community can be. This was discussed last week with Julianne and Glenn from Subo, and I was thinking the same thing when I spoke to today's guest, Sarah Piper. I hope Sarah won't mind me saying this, but after we recorded the podcast, we're having a chat, and she just asked me out of the blue, "Is there any way I can help you with your business, Katie?" I know this sounds simple, but I just thought that it was such a kind thing for her to ask and something I hope to keep in mind when talking to business owners in future. We're all in this together, and often there are really easy ways we can help each other. It could be something as simple as commenting on a social media post. So it was just a really timely reminder for me to support those people around me as much as I can. And I'd love you to reach out to me if there's any way I can help you with your business. So this week, I had the pleasure of speaking with Sarah, who's the founder of Invisible Partners. Sarah is mum of 2 children, Leah 6 and Nicholas 4, and married to David. As you'll pick up by her accent, she was born in Scotland and made Australia home 15 years ago. It was on a trip back to Scotland that she had 2 aha moments that saw her launch Invisible Partners 18 months ago. Before this, Sarah had over 18 years' experience in the recruitment industry, having led and managed diverse teams across Australia, the UK, and Southeast Asia. I absolutely love what Sarah has created in Invisible Partners and the way she champions and values flexible work. This is something we discuss in today's episode, along with how she leads a team when she's not in the office 40 hours a week, and how her and the family have found the transition of her daughter starting school this year. I really hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So thanks, Sarah, so much for being here today.
My pleasure. So delighted to be able to speak to you about all this fun stuff.
Fantastic. Now, I just wanted to start. I always ask my guests about their mornings because something I find is that mornings can be a bit of a pain point. So how was your morning today, and what does a typical morning look like in your household?
Every morning is different in the sense that we have different destinations to drop our children off to, different people. My husband, myself, we have sometimes some nanny support that helps us. So it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle around who's doing what and where they're going and who needs what. And so it is a bit of a jigsaw puzzle that if you haven't planned it out well on a Sunday night, it can the wheels can come off quite quickly. So I completely concur. Mornings can be a massive problem area, but generally speaking, how our morning runs, and today was a good morning. So I'm pleased to say I'm winning today. I wake up really, really early. I'm one of those kind of crazy people that is a morning person. So I get up really early and I do a yoga class at 6 o'clock.
Oh, fantastic.
So that kind of sets me up for my day. If I don't do that, I get really grumpy very, very quickly. And so that kind of is really important to me and my mental health. And I probably do that 4 days out of 7. And I then quickly do a bit of tag teaming with my husband, make sure lunches are made. That normally falls to me because my husband can barely boil an egg. So food preparation is kind of my domain. And then mornings are really my husband's territory. So I dash off as quickly as I possibly can to be in the city early and squeeze in most of my day in the morning. So then I can then dash off early and pick up. So that's kind of how we tag team. Mornings are my husband's domain and afternoons and pick up are my domain. So yeah, then it's just around prep drop off, kinder drop off and everything else in between.
Oh, that's great. It's intense, that period, isn't it? I've spoken to other guests who've had kids where there's multiple drop-offs, and I can imagine that would be quite a challenge.
Yeah, it's a juggling act.
Yeah, but I like the fact that you guys share it and that so you sort of focus on your work in the mornings, and I think that works really well because then that can be your sort of time for getting everything sorted. Were you always a morning person in terms of getting up for yoga before you had kids?
Yeah, I've always been a bit annoying with my morning. I'm rubbish in the afternoon. Anything after 4 o'clock, I'm really ordinary. So you can't be everything, and definitely mornings are my thinking time. I'm most creative in the mornings. I think at my best. But yeah, so mornings have never been particularly difficult, but it's another level. When you've got little people disturbing you overnight, mornings can become more challenging, and we're definitely still in that domain. My son's still in that sort of waking up right, coming into your bedroom at 4 a.m, staring you in the face, and you get terrified. We're still in that domain. So mornings can be a bit tricky if you've had that disturbance.
Yeah. But I think it's good to have that in place, that you do your yoga and you know that that's important kind of to set your day up. So fantastic.
Yeah, it's super important. Yep.
Excellent. Now, you are the founder of recruitment agency Invisible Partners, and I just wanted to hear about this, how you started the business and what was the catalyst for starting it.
Sure. Invisible Partners, I'm going to slightly correct you, is the antithesis of agency, recruitment agency. We are the opposite. We're anti-agency. And we're not anti-recruitment agency, but we are the alternative option for organisations looking to hire. And it's been a journey, and a journey was really influenced by motherhood and parenthood. So I have had big corporate jobs with big flash titles and global remits, and lived and worked in Singapore looking after the Southeast Asian region for a big search firm, and had lots of fun and lots of big ego-driven titles. And so that was my world, and that's what I thought success looked like. And then I had children, and that kind of changed everything. I felt like that life was requiring me to rush everything, rush myself, rush my children, rush work into little pockets that I just didn't perform at my best. And I'd gone from complete high performance to feeling incredibly strung out, stressed out, anxiety fueled, and just felt like I was failing at everything. And I wasn't the sort of parent that I wanted to be. I wasn't present. I wasn't at all the parent that I wanted to show up to be. And so even although recruitment is a passion of mine, and I love seeing businesses grow through hiring the right people, and I love helping individuals kind of ace their career and really develop in their career journey, I knew I couldn't continue to do it in the mode that I had been doing it. And so I took my children to Scotland for a bit of a hiatus and a bit of visiting of my family in my motherland. So I went there for a month, and I just had an epiphany around, I knew that I wasn't the only female to be feeling like this and to feel kind of stretched across too many different buckets of their life. And I wanted to fix that for myself, but I didn't just want to fix it for myself. I wanted to fix it for others. So that was my first epiphany, my first kind of aha moment that led to the creation of Invisible Partners. And the second was really the changing of the recruitment industry. And so when I corrected you around the terminology around agency, the agency world is really changing. And so currently mid-sized corporates, which is our segment of customer, so employees of 50 to 500, currently when they look to hire, they have to go to the very expensive, overpriced, arguably unreliable solution of engaging an agency. And so they pay tens of thousands of dollars. The outcome they get is sometimes okay, and sometimes it's not, and it can sometimes go horribly wrong, and there's no real skin in the game of the agent. The other opportunity they have, other option they have, is hiring somebody internally to do something, but they might not need a full-time FTE. They might just have a project or a spike of recruitment requirement that doesn't actually warrant somebody being on their payroll full-time, and often all they can afford for somebody to be on their payroll full-time is a very tactical, low-level, inexperienced person. So what Invisible Partners do is help those mid-sized organizations to hire with access to amazing talent acquisition professionals, and they access them through Invisible Partners. We've grown a wonderful community, a wonderful family of talent acquisition professionals that really don't want to do 9 to 5. They want to do flexible work. They want to do great work and really great. They want to solve great problems for their customers and their clients, but they don't want to do that in the confines of 9 to 5. They want to do that from home sometimes. They want to do that on site sometimes, but they want to do it around their commitments outside of work. And so that's what we brought those two kind of aha moments together and made Invisible Partners.
Oh, I loved hearing that. That's fantastic. I apologize in regards to...
No, I'm almost glad I didn't correct you earlier in our kind of briefing notes, because I wanted to kind of talk about that story and the difference.
Yeah, I really like that. And it's just so needed at the moment in this climate that you're recognizing that there is a need for this, and that businesses have to work in a different way too. I think that that's really important. I can completely relate to what you were saying in regards to that feeling when you returned to work after you had your children, that you just couldn't be everything to everyone, and that you would, well, the way that I felt was as if I was just doing everything poorly, and I was really stressed. And I just don't think that, well, I was not prepared for that at all. I had, I'd watched people around me in the workplace return from mat leave, and I had seen that they had challenges, but I think that when you're not in that space, you kind of don't relate as much. But, I read books while I was on mat leave, like Lean In, and was thinking, yeah, I can do this. And I had all this newfound creative passion, I guess, and motivation in a way too. But then when I went back to my old job, I just felt as if I wasn't the same person anymore, and I was not able to do it the way that I used to do it. And in hindsight, I think probably was doing it I was just doing it differently. I wasn't necessarily worse at it, but because I wasn't that old person that I was, I couldn't pick it up, and the best solution for me was to start my business. So I loved hearing that.
Yeah.
And that you then kind of wanted to help others as well.
Yeah, I don't mean to sound completely altruistic, because clearly Invisible Partners is a commercial business, and world domination is my next destination. It's not completely selfless, but I did feel completely compelled to give really, really good people that had just divorced themselves from 9 to 5, that weren't working, that had completely given up on the opportunity to be financially independent. And whilst my business isn't exclusively female oriented, the reality is all of my invisible workforce to date are females. So that's kind of not particularly surprising, with the caring responsibility still is default female, even although that needs to continue to be challenged. And some of the most satisfying parts of the business that I have launched, and we're 18 months old, so we're still really, really early in our journey, and we have nearly 8 people working on site in different client environments, and I'd say half of those people were not working, so they had not worked for 2, 3, 4 years. So part of my role has been to help them raise their confidence back up, to get them to access more up-to-date skills in our world of recruitment, so technologies and platforms that have emerged in the last 4 or 5 years since I've been out of the workforce. And the biggest satisfaction for me is having those people go, I didn't think this was available to me. I am doing such good stuff. Their confidence, I can see, has grown exponentially, and they're just flourishing. And whilst they're doing that because they're investing in themselves and they're committing to whatever outcome they're committing to with Invisible Partners, and it's their own journey, it's wonderful to be part of it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's cool.
Nodding my head, smiling, because I've had that conversation with a few different friends lately about returning to work, and I know that it is scary. If you've had some time out, and it's scary enough even after a short break.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that you're doing that. What's some advice that you would give to someone who has had a little bit of time off, or is, I guess, a bit scared about going back?
Sure.
What would you say to them about, or encourage them to?
I think part of it is the language that you speak. So I think when you are, and let's focus on kind of parents, stay-at-home parents, and that might not be the only reason that you're out in the workforce. It could be redundancy, it could be ill health, it could be looking after aging parents, but particularly parents who have been around young kids for a sustained period of time, and their only dialogue is around family and around children, starting to pick up the vocabulary that sits in a professional world, not necessarily recruitment, any professional life. You get out the habit of talking like that, and you feel really disarmed by the lingo or the lack thereof. And so I think just getting yourself into a short course and going to networking events, even if you don't speak, even if you just observe and kind of absorb some of the language around you to get yourself back into that mode, because it doesn't take long to pick the language back up again, but being out of that can really undermine your confidence levels. That would be one piece of advice I'd give around education, short courses, networking events, or even just speaking to some of your old colleagues, picking up the phone, reconnecting through LinkedIn and platforms like LinkedIn, and just revisiting those relationships and those conversations that you've dropped since you've been out of the workplace, rereading your resume. And it sounds kind of, you can write your resume, you can paint over your resume, but actually reading it and reminding yourself where those pinnacles of your career have been, so that it's fluid when you start talking about them in an interview scenario. And being around people that lift you up. We've all got those kind of naysayer friends that don't do that for us. So you might want to minimize your time with those individuals in your life, and really be around people that have your back and can help you see the brilliance of you when you're at a loss for seeing that yourself.
Oh, great. I love those tips, and they're really easy and quite simple to get back into and do. So thank you for sharing those.
My pleasure.
Now, Sarah, I just wanted to ask you about your family. So you mentioned before you've got 2 kids. I just wondered if you could talk about your husband and 2 kids.
Sure, I'd love to. I'm my happiest when I'm in my complete flow. I'm with my family, so I love talking about my family. So I love that you've asked. I have a lovely husband who I've been married to for nearly 10 years. His name's David. And he is a huge support to me and Invisible Partners, even although he gets a bit cheesed off when I talk about it, because it's kind of my third baby. I have a beautiful daughter called Leah, and she's 6, and she's just halfway through her first year in school, her prep year. And I have a very cheeky little boy called Nicholas, who's 4. and he is source of huge humor and fun, and he is just like, he's going to be a stand-up comedian, there's no doubt. And then we have 2 fur babies, a little dog who's 18 months old and hugely demanding in his first 6 months, and he's starting to come good now, but no one told me how hard a puppy would be. That's a huge piece of advice I'd give any of your listeners, is just be careful with what you wish for when you have a puppy.
What sort of puppy is he?
He's a Jackoodle, Jack Russell cross poodle, cross probably about 2 or 3 other breeds in there. I think I was sold a bit of a lemon, but but he's gorgeous nonetheless. And then we have Duchess, our cat, who is beautiful.
Fantastic. Oh, that's funny. We've been thinking about getting a pet lately, and one of my clients is a cat protection society, so I keep going there, and I'm surprised I haven't returned with a kitten yet. Like, I've been that close, but my daughter really wants a dog, and but a friend of mine has just got a dog and she's really sleep deprived.
Oh, it's horrendous. It's so much more demanding, and you don't have the hormones helping you to love the thing. So it's really demanding. The crying, the toilet training, it's just like the toddler stage, but really condensed. So it's very, very demanding, much more demanding than I anticipated. But we're at that now. We're in a nice zone with our dog, who's been worth the investment.
Good to hear it. Good to hear. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. I was going to ask you a bit later on, but I think I might ask you now about prep and how you're finding the school experience and how your daughter's adjusted and how that works for you with your business. If it's trickier with days.
It is tricky. It's tricky purely because of the 2 different ages that we've got. I think it will be easier when they're both in school, but because my son's not there yet. So her adjustment and her introduction to prep has been wonderful. We've got a beautiful primary school that my daughter attends, and the parent network around that school has been amazing, and so I think that helps. But it is a big adjustment. It's an adjustment for the whole family, I think, because you have to get up and out every single day and get your daughter up and out every single day, or my daughter in my instance, and that the demands around sandwiches and preparation and making sure she's got the right kit in her bag for whatever activity takes place that day. There's just a bit to it. It's relentless, and so it's exhausting for her because she's navigating all the emotional highs and lows and social cues and social kind of requirements that she's still learning, and so that's exhausting. But it's exhausting for us because it's just relentless. It's just like the working world. It's an everyday thing. So I think you just got to allow yourself not take on too much outside of school, and not just for her but for yourself. I think having a fairly quiet and being quite kind to yourself as a family for that first 6 months would be my biggest tip around adjusting to school.
Oh, that's good to hear, because I have heard that the transition can be quite difficult, because I think we sort of, you just get into the flow of life, don't you? And the kids go off to childcare or whatever circumstance you're in, they sort of, everything just happens, and then kinder and then school, but you sometimes don't just stop and think, well, it's a transition for everyone.
It really is. It really is.
The whole family, and I guess it just becomes stressful if you don't acknowledge that.
Yeah, I think so. And being ready. I think it's, childcare, specifically childcare, is set up so much for working parents, but school is not. And so the expectation that you're in class and I want to be in class, and I want to be able to be a participating parent, and I am, but it's quite demanding. And the expectation for parent contribution and volunteering is also constant and fairly demanding. And I don't want to be the parent that doesn't contribute and isn't visible, because that's important for my child to see me being active and contributing and being part of her school life. But it's a demand that if you worked in a more rigid environment that didn't have the flexibility that I enjoy as a business owner, I think that would be a huge source of stress.
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, that's why I actually started the podcast, because my daughter's starting school next year, but she's at kinder, and I'm getting at the school, and I'm getting a taste for how it will be. And I just have wondered, well, how are other people doing it? And do you find that with some of your clients that is why they're looking for flexible work?
Yeah, completely. And because many corporates still don't offer flexibility, or not to the extent that you might need it to be a participating parent in class. It's those incidental things, you can not always get time off for the annual assembly and the kind of school concert, but it's those incidental moments where You want to be able to make that decision when your child said, no, I really wanted you to come into class today. I really want you to see me reading or reciting or doing whatever the thing is, the small thing is. It's those moments that you really want to be visible for. And so I think the invisible workforce, which is my wonderful community that works with my client group, often they have just thought work's just not available to me. And so that's been wonderful to be able to help them get back into work, earn some independence through financial independence, and get some mental stimulation through working, but still be able to make the decisions they want to make around their family. That's what they've been allowed to do, which is great.
I love that. I love that, that you're sort of championing this flexible work. And is something that you've always felt strongly about, or is it more particularly since you've had kids and you've seen it play out?
It's a bit like you were saying earlier. I think until you've experienced being a parent or having a demand outside of work that's bigger, a bigger priority for you, it's really hard to have empathy. So I'm not particularly proud of how I behaved before I had children as a leader in a business. I was never verbally judgmental, but I certainly would have some internal thoughts around those working parents leaving early and rushing off to get their children. I wasn't particularly kind. But I don't think you can really understand what it's like to be a working parent or have those commitments outside of work, or just just want that flexible balance until you've gone through it yourself. Or I certainly couldn't. I didn't have that empathy chip strong enough in me. And so flexibility has become a huge topic of importance to me since children, I'd say. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And do you think we've got a long way to go, like particularly in Australia, in regards to flexible work?
I do, not because we don't talk about it a lot, but because there's still some things that can make it come unstuck. So I think largely in large enterprise, large corporates, and even to a certain extent, smaller organizations, it's still left to management discretion. So if you get somebody who does not subscribe to flexible working or does not understand the importance of it or the benefit to the organization around empowering people to make decisions around their work life, then you have that, you can come up against a real blocker. So I've observed my husband in various corporate roles in his career, and he really needs to wait to navigate what the tone is within that team before he can start asking for a level of flexibility to balance his life in general, because it's not become work-life balance anymore. It's become life balance. Work infiltrates our life beyond 9 to 5. So we have emails and technology that infiltrates our life, and we're responding to those urgent moments in evenings and over weekends, and that's okay. I think that's still also okay. You can choose when you don't respond, and you can choose when you do. But similarly, we have to be able to make those decisions around our family. So I think it's just life balance. And so the fact that it's still largely dependent on someone's management discretion around whether they subscribe to flexible working or not is a weakness. And so there still is that underlying I'm not sure what you're doing, or distrust, or lack of, if you're working from home, there's still a perception around that. And sometimes that's fueled from people taking the mickey, because not everybody does do the right thing in those environments, in those scenarios. So I think flexibility in the way that we can embody it, and the way that we can measure outcome, and the way that we view performance in the workplace, flexibility is just one subset in that. I think that there's still a huge evolution. The evolution is still ongoing.
Yeah. And sort of what you were saying before, I think it's about the community valuing parents. I hate to say it like that. And if I'd heard someone say that before I had kids, I'd be like, oh. But it is in a way, because I feel the same way. Going back to what you were saying, I feel like I didn't have empathy for my colleagues when I had kids, and often in my mind, I would never show it, but I would often think, oh, leaving again, or I'm left to do the work, which wasn't always the case anyway. But I think that without community as a whole, kind of just looking at working, it doesn't even have to be parents, but because people, like I look at other colleagues I've had who've been caring for parents, or there are, now there are so many people who are doing side hustles as well, or studying on the side. And I think that's brilliant. Like, I think that actually creates a really wonderful, fulfilling life. And that we should be able to kind of look at this and think, as you said, this is just one subset of the life that we're living, not sort of try and work just around work. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really interesting. How does flexible work play out in Invisible Partners, like with your team? How do you kind of embrace it there? So
our Invisible workforce are a very diverse bunch, and they are the working parents, the big chunk of working parents. We have an amazing member of our workforce who is a triathlete. and she's an
Oh,
Iron Man,
cool.
and so she spends an awful lot of time training in a way that I can't imagine myself ever doing. But she doesn't have children. She just has a huge passion outside of work that's really important to her, and that makes her flourish in her career, and that makes her happy. And so, all power to her. And so there's loads of reasons why people want to access flexibility in our workforce. We make sure that our technology allows, so all of our technology is cloud-based. It's of no consequence where you're based as to how you can access technology and be able to sort of sign up and work. And of course, there are moments, particularly in a recruitment life cycle, where face-to-face contact is absolutely critical. So you can't be off-site and work from home all of the time, but it's about understanding when those moments are and managing your week accordingly. And so the flexibility might not necessarily be in a location. People sometimes like turning up to an office environment and getting the buzz that you get when you sign up and land into an office environment. So people sometimes preference that. So it can be location, it could be hours, it could be just working part-time, it could be job sharing. There's loads of variances to flexible working in our community, and it's not, every person's got individual kind of drivers for it and things that are going to be right for them.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I work from home, and I can see the benefits to that, but I can also see, I try and tap into a co-working space when I can. I was doing that weekly. I haven't really been lately, but I was finding at times, it is quite isolating and lonely. But I know some people are like, no, I don't want to work from home. I want that separation. And I want to have that buzz in the office. And I must say that is something I do miss, kind of that day-to-day, those chats that pop up. So that's a really good point, that everyone has different needs and wants around flexibility and what they want. So I guess it's kind of just being able to offer a whole range of different things and work to people's strengths as well. Like some people probably maybe an introvert and want to sort of have a quieter space to work in. Right. Some people are extroverts, and so that's really interesting. I wanted to talk to you about leadership, because you obviously lead a team, and I love talking about leaders in this day and age, because there's a lot of there's a big change in leaders, I think, at the moment, and leadership is really important because there's a lot of bad leaders out there too. So I just wanted to talk to you about that and the importance really to you, Sarah, of being a good leader.
I think being a good leader in today's ever-changing workforce is, I was going to say it's challenging, but it's really not. It's just about being a good human being. So treating people with respect. I think kindness is one of the most critical qualities in being a good leader. Humility and presenting to your team that you don't necessarily have all of the answers, because you don't. No one does. But being okay with that. So without being kind of too Brene Brown and cliche about it, vulnerability, humility, kindness and respect, they're fundamentally the qualities that I try to work on and try to bring into my leadership, and the components that I admire in others. I think in having a team and having a team that flourishes, and one of the single most important factors in high performance teams is psychological safety. And what that means in real terms is not being fearful of putting up your hand and having a suggestion for fear that it might be shut down, or it might be wrong, or for whatever reason it might not be received well. If you feel safe as a team, you feel like your leadership and your peer group have got your back, then you, generally speaking, teams flourish and are brave and are able to take those risks that pay off sometimes and learn from those failures when it doesn't work out. So I think if you can role model and represent those qualities of respect, kindness, humility, and vulnerability to not have all the answers, that really creates and harnesses that psychological safety in a team, which helps people bring their best self to work. So they're the things that I prioritize in leadership.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what, like, we're only having these conversations really, I would say, the last 10 years or less. And I love it, because I feel like I hadn't seen leaders like that beforehand. And I think that that's really, really important, that we can feel as if, we're listened to in the workplace. We can speak about what we want to speak about. We can put our hands up. So I really think that that's great. In terms of leaders, who do you look up to?
It's an interesting question, because I think an awful lot of the large enterprise businesses still have a level of command and control there. And so I've kind of bucketed a couple of leaders locally that I have been fortunate enough to build great professional relationships with. And so there's a lady called Helen Sunis, who's a chief executive officer for RMIT Online. She's also led teams and had executive roles at Seek and Etsy in her career. and she's somebody who I hold dear in my network. She very much leads with vulnerability and humility and is incredibly talented and really inspirational, but doesn't need to shout about that. She just is. And so that's really, I'm very grateful to have her in my network. Another leader locally who's the managing director of Momentum Energy, who is a firecracker of a leader, so really dynamic, really inspiring, breaking all the norms within the energy retailing industry around gender and age and stereotypes that normally lead businesses of that size and sector. And she is just amazing, incredibly high energy and inspirational. So there are two sort of local Australian leaders I really admire. And then I'm a huge fan of Oprah Winfrey. I think as a thought leader and a female role model and even a spiritual leader, I think she's phenomenal. And so I subscribe to her podcast, and I love the language she speaks, and I love the people that she has on as her guests. So I think she's probably one of my other kind of more global leaders that I really subscribe to.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's really good that you've got sort of local leaders that you look up to. And I think that there is a massive... It's a huge factor in terms of not just actually if you've got your own business, but work in general, to have those mentors, I guess,
Totally.
to look up to.
Totally.
Or the people that you talk to, or even that if you don't even know, that you can kind of admire from afar and see how they operate.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that that's super, super important. Now, Sarah, I just wanted to pivot back a little bit back to family life. And a question I've often asked my mums on the show is about mum guilt. I wondered if that plays out for you in your life and how you look at mum guilt, I guess.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing, and it's so there's just no use for mum guilt. It doesn't help anyone. But yes, of course, I have absolutely struggled with mum guilt, particularly early in my mummy working career, being a working parent. When I first went back to kind of full on corporate, my daughter was 30 months when I went back to work, and I went back to work 4 days a week, and I put her into childcare 4 days a week, and I was racked with guilt, and I was consumed by guilt. And it wasn't really until I launched my own business and was able to dictate a bit more around how I choose to spend my time that I've minimized that feeling of guilt and that feeling of kind of overwhelm. And I don't, not every single day do I master that, because it still raises its head from time to time. So it's certainly, it's always a work in progress. And I think it's really, really tough. I think the thing that I try, that the sort of internal dialogue that I have with myself is that mummy guilt doesn't serve anyone, doesn't make your child any happier, doesn't make you any more present by feeling guilty. No one's served by that. So I just try and have a bit of positive self-talk around who is this serving, and it serves no one.
Yeah.
And so you either can change what you're doing. So if you're really experiencing feelings of guilt, is there something you can change to minimize that, or do you just need to reconcile that with this is not serving anybody and move on? But it's a huge topic that I think permeates most working parents, particularly mums.
Yeah, I think so too. Is it something that you see come up amongst your community as well?
For sure, without a doubt. And I think we just need to let ourselves off the hook a little bit more. You know, children are so good at showing us how to live in the present. They don't ruminate over the missed thing last week, or the wrong sandwich put into the lunchbox, or the thing, whatever the thing is that's stimulating our mum guilt. And I think they can be some of our best teachers. It's actually seeing how present they are and how they aren't thinking about the thing that you missed yesterday. And so I think using them a little bit as our teachers, without being kind of too woo about it all, I think it really is a really great life lesson around just being present in the moment. So if the thing that you forgot to do yesterday, let it go.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's great advice. And as you said, yeah, they're the greatest teachers, you know, and they don't care.
They really don't. And if you bring that kind of baggage or that kind of anxiety into your role as parent, all you're doing is role modeling that for them and giving yourself a hard time and missing out on the fun and the moment that you can have with your children.
Yeah, so true.
So yeah.
Now, Sarah, you mentioned before in regards to your daughter starting school and trying to volunteer if you can or help out. And I just wondered, how do you do that when you have a team and your own business? How do you find the time to do that and fit it into your schedule and, yeah, make it all work, I guess?
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that my husband and I kind of tag team in the day. So he does some kind of morning shift with drop-offs and breakfast and stuff like that, and I try and I'm home by 4 every day, so that kind of is a thing that I try and make happen. And I have a Wednesday off with no no formal work, albeit calls and fending things off sometimes occurs. So that's kind of my working week, is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. But it's tough. It's tough, and so sometimes things fall off, and it's not an exact science. Every week's slightly different. You've got to sit down on a Sunday and kind of look at both of your calendars together and make sure there's no crisis points and there's no things that are going to make the wheels fall off. But I think just being able to have, I think it's very, very difficult if you have one parent that's striving for a particular career destination or a business outcome, and I'm very ambitious about where I want to take Invisible Partners. I'm definitely driven, and I haven't lost my ambition just because I'm a working parent. But I think the fundamental thing that makes that available to me is having a supportive partner and having somebody who I can collaborate with and be a team with there.
Yeah.
And so, to answer your question around how I manage that as a leader in my business, I think you need to get comfortable with things happening, not necessarily on the hop, but happening when you've got availability for it. So it's very rare that I would sit down physically with my team and have a check-in physically. You have to make those phone check-ins or those Zoom check-ins work. You have to get comfortable with living virtually and being able to connect online.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to create meaning and create genuine connection online. To make those moments of connection still be meaningful.
Yeah, and I think that's actually really great role modeling to your team too, that you've got these boundaries, that you leave at a certain time, and that you have your Wednesdays at home, because you're showing to your team that I'm not working trying to cram, I'll do the 40-hour week and try and get it all done. I'm living the way that I want to live, and the way I sort of want to, I guess, highlight and show to everyone else is the way that it can work. So that's great. And I love what you say about Sundays. I've heard a few people say that now, and it seems to be kind of this magic formula that you plan everything out with your partner and you set the week up, and that's sort of going to set up a good week.
Yeah, there's no doubt that I log on most evenings. I'd say that the biggest thing that I work on as a business owner is there's no way that I could manage to cram all of my work in until that 4 o'clock cutoff and to still have a sustainable high growth business, which I'm very grateful to have. I definitely log on. So I'd say 4 nights out of 7. My husband is very tolerant of the fact that he's watching Netflix and I'm doing work.
Yeah.
And that is the reality of running a business in growth.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm glad you've mentioned that, because that is true, that work's still going on. How do you find it though with your team getting in touch with you and things like that?
We're pretty respectful around doing that within working hours. So I don't tend to do the team stuff in the evenings. That's more around client delivery. So recruitment outcomes for my clients, I would tend to sort of shoehorn in some evening components, or writing that I have to do, or content that I have to develop. That it tends to be my evening work, because that's really hard to deliver that stuff during the day. So day is all about connection and face-to-face meetings and Zoom meetings, and then evening work is about actually delivering some of the content.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, I just wanted to know, what is next for you in the business?
Yeah, it's exciting. We're growing. So I mentioned earlier that we're kind of 18 months, nearly 2 years into our journey, and we've really established the formula and the business model that's working really well with our clients. And so helping those businesses have an invisible partner in their business and helping them grow their own employer brands is really fundamentally what we do. And so within the next 12 months, we will take that model to Sydney and launch in Sydney, and not necessarily having a physical presence there, but growing our invisible workforce community and extending our network to that state, New South Wales. And then there's a distinct ambition that I have of taking this global. A fairly obscure destination, of probably the next destination being Scotland, and you can probably tell by the accent that's why. But yeah, I think so. The model is really exciting and very replicable, and able to grow beyond just Melbourne. So it's just about nutting it out in Melbourne, making sure the model is really, really sound, and then extending it.
Wonderful, that's fantastic. How long have you lived in Australia for, Sarah?
15 years.
15 years.
Yeah, a long time.
And would you, having the business model in Scotland as well, would there be sort of a wish to live sort of between both countries at some stage?
I've definitely become soft since I've been in Australia, and I don't think I could handle the cold in Scotland any longer. So no, I would definitely do a bit of fly in, fly out magic making, but my network's still amazing in Scotland, and so I've definitely got a few people earmarked to take on the mantle of growing invisible partners there over time.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I love hearing that about business, that it creates that opportunity that you can grow it internationally if you want to. Yeah,
for sure.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Well, that's very exciting. Where can the listeners find you?
We're most active on LinkedIn, being a employment-oriented business that we are. So LinkedIn's probably where we're most active. So our LinkedIn Invisible Partners company page, we've got all of our updates on that, and our website's pretty active too. So blogs and kind of thought leadership posts are very much contained across our LinkedIn platform and website.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much again, Sarah. It's been such a great chat.
Thank you.
I look forward to watching you and seeing what's next.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Business Between Bells podcast. We need your help to reach more parents doing the juggle. If you have enjoyed this episode, Katie would love it if you could help spread the word by leaving a rating and review on iTunes. You can also find out more about Business Between Bells on Instagram and Facebook at Business Between Bells.